Coldwell Banker Realty. I'm here with Zack Linder.
Hey.
And today we're just going to be talking about the buying. Oh, why did you zoom in on me? Yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about the buyer's process when it comes to buying a home. Before we begin, Zack, could you give us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Zack Linder. I'm with Coldwell Banker Realty based out of the Bexley location. However, I service all of Central Ohio as well as Licking County and Fairfield County. Been in the real estate industry for about 4 years now. I mostly do like fix and flips and then on the listing side of things. But if you are a buyer, I'm happy to assist you as well. I work with tons of buyers, but mostly from the listing side. I think Ben here, he's going to be your actual buyer expert and he can take you to show the houses around.
Yeah, totally understand. Now, before we begin, I had to ask, the buying process for a lot of people tends to be the scariest part.
Sure.
Just the initial whole thinking about buying a home, that immediately turns everybody off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain like why people will do that sometimes, where they just freeze?
Yeah, no, it's understandable. So housing is going to be your biggest expense pretty much for most people in their whole lifetime, right? Like an average person is not going to spend $100,000 just to go, on vacation or something like that, but they will spend $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 on a house. So this is a large commitment, something they're going to be locking into potentially for 30, 25, 30 years on a mortgage side of things, and it's going to be the majority of their income going to this thing. So, it's an intimidating.
Should we just continue from that part? Now, you mentioned that for a lot of people, buying their first home is the biggest expense.
Right.
Now, there are a lot of ways of easing that in the first place when it comes to the buying process of getting their first home. What is usually the first thing that you tell your clients to do when it comes to buying a home?
Well, first and foremost, I let them know this is not all just about me and them helping them. There's a couple of people that are going to be in the mix, and the first one's going to be a loan officer.
Yep.
So we got to get them pre-approved first and really talk about the money side of things. I'm happy to kind of share some information on the money side, but really we need an expert that's licensed in it to share all the real details, go into credit scores, understand what kind of interest rates you qualify for, all that great stuff is going to be the first person we bring into the mix there. And once we kind of go through that, it's really about knowledge building and just understanding that the process is complex, but it's not hard, right? So each individual step is simple. There just happens to be 50 steps you all have to do in the right order. If you mess up one, it can botch the whole thing. But each individual step's not really that difficult. So it's about explaining what are those steps, what can they expect, and how I'm going to guide them through that.
Yeah, I totally understand. I know with mortgage officers, we usually give our clients at least 3 or 4.
Right.
Or that way they have a variety of viewpoints, a variety of what type of options they have.
Absolutely.
Now, when it comes to the buying process, the pre-approval letter or the pre-approval whole paper that you get from either the lender, from the bank, or from the credit union is probably the most important thing they need when it comes to buying a house.
Right.
Why is it such an important need for them?
Oh, it's just to understand what they really qualify for. Why bother looking at $500,000 houses if you only qualify for a $200,000 loan? And it's to help you understand, like, what is your payment going to be? It's like, what does $300,000 how does it translate in a monthly payment setting? That sounds like a big number, but maybe it's only $2,000 each month, and you're already paying rent of $2,500. It just depends on that. It's to understand what the numbers really are and what we need to move forward.
I totally understand with that. Now, the next part about the buying process is obviously just trying to find the right properties.
Sure.
And people come up with crazy things that they want in a property. Yeah, they get very optimistic.
Right.
What are some ways that you tell your clients that, listen, it would be nice to have all these things, but you got to be sure to keep it realistic?
No, for sure. And I try to keep it really simple. I know there are people that say I need a pool and a garage and I need doors facing north and all this crazy stuff. And that's very valid, and there's real reasons for them. However, I try to tell people, tell me your budget, the area you want to be in, approximately how many beds and approximately how many bathrooms you need, and let's just go look at them. Because there might be a house that you love that's 80% of everything that you need, and it's missing a garage in the back. But maybe it's $50,000 under value, and we say, all right, it has everything else you want. Why don't we just take the rest of the money you would be spending on that house that has a garage and build you a brand new one? Or maybe you hate the colors of the walls. Let's just repaint the walls, right? Like, there's lots of things you can do to the house to make it what you want. So can we get 85% of what you're looking for? And let's just go look in person, because pictures online are extremely deceiving.
Big time.
I sometimes get that feedback on my listing. I have a really good photographer and he does an amazing job, but sometimes they go there in person. It's like, oh, this is a little bit more distressed than the look of the pictures, so.
Yep. Now I got to ask you, what is probably the craziest story you have when it comes to the first 2 parts of the buying process?
Sure.
What is like the funniest thing that has ever happened And when it comes to getting the letter and then looking at the first few houses in the process, anything that's funny at least.
So actually, the first part is a little bit more difficult, but I had a funny first house we looked at. So it was actually out at Buckeye Lake, and it was a little distressed. We knew that going into it.
Oh,
but
Buckeye Lake, everybody loves the jet skis
I
out there.
love Buckeye Lake. Yeah. And so, anyways, apparently these people were rescuing wild animals, but they didn't really let people know. So there was a glowing, I guess, red color coming from one of the closets. I didn't ask questions. I go to open the closet, and I just hear a and there's like a giant iguana in there, not in a cage. It was just, they're using the closet as a cage. There was a hawk just wild, like in the house, just going, because they just rescued a wild hawk, and there's like scratch marks everywhere and poop around. I was like, what is happening here? This is a zoo? So it was kind of interesting. They did end up buying the property actually, but I just wasn't expecting that going into it.
Hey, I've heard crazy stories when it comes to buying properties,
Right.
ranging from finding a snake in the middle of the kitchen to finding a hornet's nest in the basement.
Yep.
And obviously, those are the crazy ones. Obviously, normal ones, people that they tend to see most of the time is probably a leaky faucet with water in the basement, or not leaky faucet, but any cracks with that. When it comes to the buying process and negotiating, what do the buyers need to be prepared for when it comes to negotiations?
Yeah. So I like to tell them up front, we are trying to get the best deal for you, but this is also like usually, not always, but usually it's two normal people that are just negotiating with each other. So let's not try to like kneecap anyone. Let's be realistic with our expectations. And so we're going to go in and look at what is the market like. Is this a buyer's market or is it a seller's market? So Columbus in general has kind of been a seller's market for the last couple of years. I think as of last year, you've started to see pockets of more buyer's markets where you can ask for like credits and maybe like a little reduction in the price, things like that. So we really want to try to evaluate comps, look at how many other people are trying to buy this house right now, how long it's been on the market, all those good things, and then usually try to just not be greedy, but ask for like 5,000 in credits, maybe 10,000 off the price, something like that. Lots of options. And then there's a second phase to it. So we're going to typically have an inspection, right?
Oh yeah.
So after you get the inspection, if they find nothing crazy, obviously move forward with it. But let's say we find a roof leak, or like you mentioned, a leak in the basement or something that we didn't see when we were looking at the house. That's going to be another time where we can go and negotiate maybe more credits or have them fix it, something along those lines. I just had a house I closed yesterday actually where they did some floor joist repairs. Unfortunately, it wasn't up to the standard. We had an inspector go out there and look at them again. And so they ended up giving us a $3,500 credit in lieu of the repairs, even though they did the repairs, just because it wasn't up to the standard, right? And so that's why it's good to have a good realtor that's not just saying, oh, there's new wood here, it looks like it was done. Have like a licensed professional go look at it.
Yeah, you need that full transparency,
Exactly.
not just from the seller side, but also from the buyer side. When a realtor has really great attention to detail, you're working with the best of the best, which is who we're with, Coldwell Banker Realty.
Exactly.
We're the best of the best.
Exactly.
Now, when it comes to the city of Columbus, and the buyers markets that we're seeing, what are some of the things that people need to expect about the city of Columbus? Obviously, probably the first thing that people will think about is, if we're talking about those that don't know Columbus, they're going to be like, what is this place?
Yeah.
But then when they look up Ohio and they see the affordability of houses, we're like in the top 5.
Right. So what was the question again? I apologize.
Hey, totally understand. I knew that was going to happen at some point. My question was, what are people going to expect in Columbus when it comes to buying a home, other than how crazy affordable it can be in the city?
No, perfect. Sorry. So I think something that's great about Columbus, that's more unique about our city than maybe some others, is just how many different pockets of the city there are. So I think we're pretty close to German Village right now, right?
Oh yeah.
And so
Deutschland Village, yeah.
Right.
Deutschland Village. I forget how to say
perfect.
it.
Close enough. I'll believe you. But if you go to German Village, that's a distinctly different feel than when you come to where I live, Canal Winchester. But they're both nice areas, and they both have different perks to them. And I think Columbus is just full of different spots like that. So that's one kind of unique feature here that really decide which part of town you want to be in. Like do you want to be close to the Intel, more in like Licking County, where for business stuff? Do you want to be downtown to be part of all the theater stuff? Lots of different things down there, or on OSU campus where you're part of the college scene.
Or if you love golf, I live in Murfield. People love watching the Memorial Tournament every year out there.
100%. I've helped volunteer at that 2 or 3 times. I love the Memorial Tournament, so that's great. And I think when you come to Columbus, there is a lot of affordability, but one thing there's a lot of opportunity here as well. And I think there's tons of industry coming into Columbus. So our city is transforming. What it looks like today, I think, will be very different 5-10 years from now. So I'm from Orlando, Florida. I was living there when Disney kind of first came and took over that whole area.
Oh yeah.
And when I lived in a town called St. Cloud, it had 2 restaurants, Fat Boys and the Catfish place when I was born, right? And now I go home like, oh my God, this is a city in itself in St. Cloud, right? And then Orlando is a completely different beast. And I think Columbus is kind of on that same trajectory. This was a city before, and I think we're moving to a metropolis now. It's going to take a little bit of time to get there, but I think this is a wave that people can ride. It's still affordable.
Oh, yeah.
I question whether it will be affordable 10, 15 years from now, but I think like now is your time to get in and ride that wave.
I think it will definitely be affordable 5-10 years from now, because no matter what, we have so many different businesses and companies moving into Columbus from every single industry that you can think of that are offering really good opportunities for people to be able to not only receive that very good wage, but have the ability to afford homes.
100%.
Now, recently, Columbus has reported, the realtors has reported that we saw an uptick in sales last year, beating expectations that everybody was thinking because of the interest rates.
Sure.
So do you think on the buyers, is interest rates going to affect them again this year? Here, like people were thinking last year, or are we now seeing a shift where it's like, even if the interest rates are a little higher or lower than last year, we'll still be able to get a home in Columbus?
Yeah. And so I think people were very interest rate sensitive for a little bit because there was such a shock. It went from like on my house, I had like a 2% rate, and then the house I just bought last year, I paid $8,000 for a buy down to get it at a 5.8% rate.
Yep, I remember that rate.
So you know, like people I'm selling houses to are in the 6s, 7s right now, and for a little bit there, people were like, oh, it's going to go back down to 2 or 3. I think people are coming to terms that that's not going to happen. I do think interest rates are creeping back down a little bit. Hopefully by the end of the year, you know, we're talking in the low 6s, something like that.
Low 6s, maybe
high 5s if we're lucky.
High 5s, yeah.
But I don't want to speculate on that because it could go up. You know, like
it could go up again.
I just watched the FOMC last night, and they did not do an interest rate cut for the Fed. So you know, take that for what it is, right? And but with that being said, I think historically, somewhere in the 6s is a pretty normal interest rate, and people are seeing that the houses are appreciating. They have to live somewhere. I think they're coming to terms with it. Now, one thing that I've been doing a lot is helping clients with buy downs. So we talked about buyers markets and sellers markets before. So I've been getting a lot of credits on my sales for buyers where I give them a $5,000 closing credit, and instead of putting it towards closing costs, you know, we can maybe take half of that and buy down your interest rate. So it goes from 7% to 6.5%, you know, or something, or doing a temporary buy down.
And that's basically extra money that buyers could use for, who knows, maybe a simple renovation they want to do immediately. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to buying a home as a buyer, it's not going to be a perfect home. You'll want to add your own little piece of heaven or your own little taste of paradise into it.
Exactly.
Like I know, for example, my brother, he's up in the Cleveland area. They're now building a new home on the west side of Strongsville, and one of the things they're immediately planning to do once the house is finished, they're going to put in a finished basement, add an extra bathroom down there, not just for utilities, but
huge.
It's because my brother kind of wants to have his own little man cave.
I hear it. I love, so in Florida, there's no such thing as basements, right? And so when I moved up here to Ohio, I was like, oh my God, there's a whole house underneath the house. and so like, I always finish mine, I call it the Lucky Linder Lounge because my name's Zack Linder, right? So it's like, I got like a blackjack table down there and all this crazy stuff. It's a lot of fun, and I love finished basements. I mean, the house I sold in Lancaster last year, the basement was kind of finished when we bought it. We just put carpet tiles down, did the bar nice, and man, that was like the feature that sold the house.
I have to ask, is it a walkout basement or is it a complete full basement?
Complete full basement, you know? So, I mean, you couldn't live down there. You can't count it as square footage, but a normal person going down is like, I can see the vision.
That's actually something that came up with my brother as well. He asked me, and this is something that I think some buyers are probably going to ask. When it comes to buying a home, does finished basements, let me rephrase the question. When it comes to finished basements with buyers, does it add to the square footage of the house for the cost, or doesn't? Now, one answer that I did get with that is since it's a basement and not considered livable area.
Sure.
It's not added into the tax report when it comes to buying a home. What have you seen on your end with that?
So that's definitely accurate. Unless it has proper like egresses, then there's are ways you could get it qualified for that. But I will say, just because on paper it doesn't show one way, most buyers are savvy enough to understand. And so like when I'm showing a house and it has 3 rooms in the basement and it's finished, and it's like, this is a 2-bedroom house, but like you could use this as 5 bedrooms, but they can't legally call it that, right? And so it depends on the basement, obviously, but
and it depends on the city ordinance as well.
Of course. But I would say rule of thumb is that won't be counted when you're advertising it on like the MLS or Zillow, but a normal person will be able to see when they're actually walking the house. So.
Yep, so now we talked about the beginning of the buying process, and we talked about like what people will face when it comes to buying a home. Whether it's a weird thing when doing the first tour or the inspection,
sure.
or looking at the additional costs or the additional savings they could get depending on how the process works. Now walk us through on like what do you usually do at the end of the buying process when it comes to sitting at the table, writing the contract, getting the negotiations ready, as well as getting ready to meet the title company for any closings.
Yeah. So, once we found the house, like you mentioned, we're going to write the contract on that. Once we go into contract, comes the inspection step. That's a really important phase in all this. After that, assuming you have a loan, it's going to have bank appraisals component there, but you're going to pay for the bank to have it appraised on their behalf to make sure all this stuff. It's kind of weird. But then after that, we get to the closing table. We're going to meet at the title company, typically the day of closing. Sometimes it's round table, but these days, most of the time the seller signs beforehand and the buyer is there by themselves. They're going to get a packet this big. It's going to have like 500 pieces of paper in it. And basically, you're going to have to write your name like 200 times. I don't know the exact number. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but it's a full 30 minutes to an hour of like sign a date here, sign a date here. And, each of the papers is going to be like, this is about the mortgage, this is your deed, this is all the things.
It's sort of like that one scene from Blazing Saddles where Mel Brooks is just work, just signing away at these new walls.
exactly like that. And then at the end, the bank, your loan officer is going to have their bank wire the money to the title company. Once that happens, the funds are cleared and you get the keys, right? And it's pretty simple.
Now, how long does that type of process usually take for you?
Yeah.
Because some people like they'll sign something at closing, but then it's like 3 months later, then they get it.
Sure.
Or for others, it's like literally the next day.
Yeah. So that's actually negotiated in the contract itself.
Okay.
You're going to have something called the possession period.
Yep.
So a lot of times I'll try to put immediate or at funding, once you get keys as soon as you close. I'd say that happens like 70-80% of the time. However, let's say the house is occupied and they need to find a place to live, or they're moving as well. There could be a lot of reasons for it. We might give them 2 weeks possession or a month possession, where technically you own the house and the old owner is renting it from you, but they're not. A lot of times there's no money exchanges as part of the deal, and there are rights. So if they like wreck the house or something like this, there's recourse to it. But it's one of those things that helps just smooth the process, so that way it doesn't always have to be vacant houses that are being sold. It can be occupied ones. We can start like daisy chaining them together. So.
Oh yeah, my brother's doing the same thing as well. Going through that process. He has some stuff in store. They had to move to storage to get ready for their house to be sold.
Sure.
While at the same time, they just finished signing the last things to completely buy the property.
Oh, nice.
Now at the end of the negotiations, the buyer has bought the property. Mm-hmm. What are some things you do to celebrate that with your clients? Do you take them out to dinner, or do you give them a simple card, or what are some fun stuff you have done?
Yeah, so funny enough, actually, a lot of my buyers will give me closing gifts. I don't know, that's what I expected, but it's like, oh, you did such a good job, Zach. Here's like $100 gift card. It's like, I'm getting paid like a ton of money for closing. Like, thank you, I appreciate it. But anyway, so I truly try to, assuming it's around lunchtime or dinner time, after we close, I'll invite them to go out somewhere just to celebrate it a little bit together. A lot of times people have to go to work or have other plans, so I don't pressure too hard.
I totally understand on that.
And then if it's a client I've been working with for a while, or it's like a house where they mentioned they loved like a fireplace or something, I might get them like a gift associated with that. I also sometimes have these shirts that say I bought a house from Zack Linder, and all I got was this lousy shirt, and so I'll sometimes give that to them.
You're gonna have to send me an image of that.
Yes,
when you get a chance.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So I've been trying to lean more into that. I might do that more often now, but so I just like to give little trinkets, and then really at the end of the day, I'm trying to follow up with people, and then throughout the years, So like if you've closed your house with me 2 years from now, I'm going to probably invite you to some sort of like get together or event that is like, hey, you're one of my clients, and I'll just come to this thing, right? So it's not always about close gift, right? Like that almost seems like a transaction, but it's sometimes just about continuing the touches and like, hey, now you're part of my community.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so I need to pour into you because you already invested in me, and then it's just a back and forth.
It's been the same way with me. I'm a couple of my clients, they're from the Indian and Pakistan community, and we developed such a great relationship. They invited me to some of their stuff.
I love it.
Although, fair warning about the Pakistan community, you got to come on an empty stomach, because if you go on a full stomach and they still serve you food,
that's what you got to either make it happy.
You're going to be carried out on a wheelbarrow, basically.
Fair.
Yep. Now, just one final question I have to ask. What is probably your most favorite memory when it comes to the buying process? Is it like your clients' reactions to finding the true house they found? Or has it been something that happened after where they're just so thankful they did something for you?
So I actually take on a number of very difficult like situations sometimes. So I think, for instance, I had this one property that had 12 different owners. Basically, so the way it shook out, one person owned it, he passed away, and it went to his 12 children. And then after that, like one of the children had passed away, so it went to potentially. So it was a whole bunch of people involved.
It sounds like a Knives Out story,
right? And so some didn't want to be involved with it. Some were. It was a whole mess. And thankfully, the couple of people that were in charge of getting it done, they were like very helpful. But they were so thankful by the time we got to the end of this that I was able to like corral all these like 15 people, get all these signatures, just so everybody can sell this $100,000 house and split it 10 different ways. But at the same time, it was a very complex transaction that was really kind of tearing the family a little bit. Some were angry about this and that. And so when we got to the end table, or the closing table of it, the ones that had hired me to do the job, they were just so thankful that it was finally done and passed behind them. Like it took 3 or 4 months to get to the closing table. So
I think that's one thing about real estate agents when it comes to the buyers, and that people think that they're or it's a stereotype that when you're a buyer's agent that you're out chasing for the money. But no, we're out to create good, strong, hearty relationships. To the point that they'll not only want to use us again, but they'll look to us for anything. Sometimes I know in the past one of my clients that I'm still working with right now, he's not looking to me for different advices, not just in real estate but in other things as well.
Oh, for sure.
And I have another client who. Yeah, he knows I love history so much that he calls me asking help on a history subject.
I love it.
I don't get it, but hey, that's just part of building a great relationship, and that's something that people need to understand, that there are realtors out there that they're not in it for the money; they're just in it to build great relationships and
solve problems.
And you know what? Sometimes the best thing to come out of that is they just make a lot of money doing it.
Yeah,
it's all about the character.
No, exactly, and I think. Like you said, it's just about helping people, and like you said, people have this impression that we just open doors and get paid for it. That is not the case. Like our job is to solve problems when they come up, put out fires, and there are real fires that happen throughout like the transaction there, and deals can fall apart 5 different times in that month that you're holding it there, and if you don't know what you're doing, it's very easy to just let it go. Right, and oftentimes it's us as the agent that's holding the 5 people together, saying no. Title with this, I got the paperwork for this is going to happen. No lending, we can get a co-signer. Don't worry, we'll get this figured out. Right? Like it happens sometimes, and you need that person that understands all the different components and just be that middleman that puts everything where it needs to be. So.
Yep. Well, that's everything we had today about the buyer process. My name is Benjamin Maag. You can contact me at 614-928-6892 or ben.mag@cbrealty.com. Zach?
Yeah, and I'm Zack Linder with Zack Linder, the Zack Pack, powered by Coldwell Banker. You can reach me at 614-440-5800 or go to zacklinder.com. I have a very nice buyer intro series on zacklinder.com actually that goes over all these steps in detail, so it might be helpful to give that a watch.
And I'll make sure to add that down into the description of my video. Once again, thanks for watching, people. This is Benjamin Maag, magnifying your dreams.